microphone, but here, let's start here. So, great. I want to briefly kind of discuss how we got to this point, where we are. This evening, there will be final drafts of both the Plan Development District Ordinance as well as the Subdivision Ordinance that we've really been working on since late last year. So I just want to give everybody kind of a little bit of background as to how this came about and what are some of the major changes to both of the documents, and then provide you with some, yep.
So I can hear you fine because you're talking toward me, but she doesn't sound amplified. Is she amplified? Can you hear?
Testing, 1, 2, 3, BR 509. Testing.
Yeah, I hear you amplified. So,
Are these on?
Hold on 1 second.
They don't.
Try now, Angela.
Yep, I got you, yep.
Jamie.
that's better.
There you go.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we're ready.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
That's better.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Again, just briefly, thank you to everybody for taking the time today to be here and to listen to this work session. I was just reiterating how both of these ordinances, the rewrites were requested by the Planning Commission late last year. And some of that history, so if I could just sort of walk through with you our latest development map. So the Planning Department, I think I've informed just about anybody who will let me know or let me talk to them that the school board has engaged the Kingsland Planning Department as well as the St. Mary's Planning Department to discuss future development with them. So it will help them redistrict for their schools. I think that's a great step forward. But what you're seeing in this map in the teal color are kind of existing developments that are building out. So Osprey Cove, and then on the far right-hand side is Cumberland Harbor. We CO'd 97 new homes in Osprey Cove last year. So oftentimes we think about Osprey Cove being fully built out, but it is still building out. Cumberland Harbor still has about 800 lots to go in terms of build out. What you're seeing in the pink, so you might recognize on the far left-hand side of the map, that's the Exit 1, 1,800 acres. So anything in pink has its zoning, it's got a civil plan set, it's got a preliminary plat. These are developments that are, in the pipe, moving forward, ready to go. And what you're seeing in yellow are more things that we haven't seen a lot of super clear movement on. The mill site is up there, but still represent a certain amount of development that we have taken some steps towards. And so altogether, when we put this information down and really calculate it, it's about 7,000 new units of housing. So some really significant development that we have already kind of put through our pipeline of development. Some of these developments, particularly Cannon Forest, which is right up here, that's very close to the, I always get them confused. It's the Sugar Mill Elementary School, but it's not by the Sugar Mill. Yeah, so we call it Sugar Mill Elementary. That's about 280 units of housing. Now, much of our housing developments, large-scale housing developments, happen under a planned development district. A planned development district is a zoning tool. It's basically a tool for a developer to write their own zoning, if you will. That we've had major success with. Cumberland Inlet has its own planned development district. Exit 1 has its own planned development district. But in the late 1990s and in the early 2000s, the planned development district was utilized to get a higher density residential development. And because of development patterns in the city, what we saw is that some of these planned development districts that were written in the early 2000s didn't come to get developed until recently. So things change, development patterns change. The Planning Commission, it was really last year, they saw what we would call legacy planned development districts. So these were planned development districts written 20 plus years ago that were now coming to be built. And they weren't really matching the intention of what we current day refer to as a planned development district, which is a mix of uses. The whole point of a planned development district is to have a creative mix of uses that you can't just get with straight zoning. So that kind of set us off on this path of what, let's see, it's end of April. I would say this has been about a 6-month process to rewrite these two ordinances. And we did them in tandem with each other because they should speak to each other. Throughout this process, we worked hard to have several work sessions. These were public meetings with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has unanimously approved and offered favorable recommendation for these two final drafts that will be before the council this evening. And we also wanted, it was very important to staff that we took the time to offer the development community the opportunity to weigh in on these drafts, to meet with my staff and I, to discuss some of their challenges, to discuss these changes. And that was a very constructive back and forth that lasted about 2 months or so. And there were some very instrumental changes that came about that. So here, this slide is showing you the major changes to the subdivision ordinance. So I just want to walk through some of those at a very high level. You know, the Planning Commission has oftentimes felt that at the stage of what we refer to as a preliminary plat, which is sort of the first attempt by the development community to lay out lots over the land. So you get a feel for what are the size of the lots, what are the setbacks, how many units, how is it laid out, where's the stormwater, where's the open space. So at that preliminary plat level, the commission felt like it didn't have enough of a design opportunity to design with the development community. So we added one very important piece which will kick off this whole process, and that's the idea of a conceptual plan. So the conceptual plan is meant to be a lighter lift for the development community. So they don't have to necessarily, show at an engineered level the exact lines of each proposed parcel, and they don't have to get too heavy into the surveying. They can put forward to the Planning Commission something much more conceptual, the layout, the open space, the roadways, the stormwater, the wetlands, the size of the lots, and that's meant to be an easy lift. So what we did is we put that into the subdivision ordinance. So conceptual plans will come to the Planning Commission. At that time, the Planning Commission will be able to say, what kind of amenities are you going to do? What does your buffer look like? How are you treating the area around the wetlands? These are all discussions that can be had between the developer and the Planning Commission way in advance of any engineering happening. Because what we were running into is that at the preliminary plat level, the commission wasn't seeing enough detail, and they would approve it. And then at the final plat, which is when you've done hundreds of thousands of dollars of engineering, when you're basically ready to start, turning dirt, as they say, the Planning Commission would start asking for design changes. And that's a very big problem. So we want to avoid that at all costs. The developers are nodding their heads in the room, right? So what we did is we kind of took away the final plat going before the commission, but we added this conceptual plat. So the proposed process now is a conceptual plat or plan comes before the commission. We have kind of a high, broad level design discussion. They would come back with a preliminary plat if conceptual is approved. That preliminary plat would only be reviewed by the commission, which is the case now. Then, once all the engineering happens, that final plat would come to staff, and staff would put it before you as a body for final approval. So it doesn't go before the Planning Commission. All right, a couple of other things that we've done. We now require a landscape plan. So why is this important? The City of St. Mary's has a vegetation ordinance, And at a subdivision scale, we can talk about the overall site and how much vegetation is being left on the site, but we don't actually have an ordinance which enables us to require a landscape plan for the common areas or a landscape plan for each lot. So, for those of you that have looked at Taylor Morrison's preliminary plat, you'll see that they actually did all of that in advance. That's kind of a benefit of a large master plan community like that. But this would require at a certain level, a conceptual and then a final landscape plan at the time of your civil plan set. The tree survey is something that we've always required. This one here, this buffers, recreation, and open space requirements, this was a big one. The Planning Commission wanted to see amenities and open space and trails and walking paths and all sorts of recreational opportunities within developments. But we had no guidance or criteria as to what those should be, how much of it there should be. So the new subdivision ordinance offers clear guidance to the development community depending on the size of the developable land, so acreage, but also the proposed number of units. We have a bit of a menu of both passive and recreation amenities that can be provided, just as suggestion. But we initially started out this ordinance rewrite with the requirement that 25% of the developable land would be set aside to open and recreation space. And after several conversations with developers, looking at how that would be too much, we backed it down to 15%. In addition to backing it down, we did a couple of other things. So in our community, we manage stormwater through lakes and ponds and things like that. So if a development creates that lake or pond in a way that is accessible, so it's not just in people's backyards, it's got a walking path on it, or it's integrated into the development in such a way that that open view shed and access to it is there for the entire community, that counts, right? So we kind of worked very hard, and also if there were jurisdictional wetlands, that's very important, so the wetlands that would require a permit from the Army Corps in order to mitigate them, if those were internal to the development and created that kind of breathing room and open space, those would count. So that was kind of the most significant reduction that we did, is we started off strong with 25% and we backed it down to 15% because we actually put a few proposed developments through the paces and we saw that 25% was too much. Couple of other interesting things, administrative reviews. So some of you that have attended the Planning Commission before, if you know the Cumberland Harbor community well, you know that people like to merge lots in Cumberland Harbor. You buy 2 or 3 lots and you do what's called a reverse subdivision and you put them into one. The new subdivision ordinance allows my staff and I and the Public Works Department and everybody else who signs off on plats to do that administratively. So you will no longer see reverse subdivisions come before this body. It's meant to kind of simplify that. Also, if you're 2 property owners who share a side yard line and you have an agreement that you're going to shift a little bit to the east or the west or the north and the south, you can do that administratively too. So that's kind of opening that up. A really big one is this residential density bonus. So I'll try to, and if anybody has any questions, please stop me. I know this is like in the weeds of the planning jargon, but here's the nut of what we're trying to do here. As I said before, the new Plan Development District ordinance no longer, as proposed, allows for purely residential development. It requires mixed use. And I have some data to support why we did that in the next slide, but I'm still on the subdivision ordinance right now. So by removing the ability to do high, well, we're not removing it, but solely higher residential development through a planned development district, we needed to create a density bonus in our new subdivision ordinance. Okay, so here's what we did. If you'll remember the subdivision incentive ordinance that was worked on a couple years ago, where a developer could propose certain architectural interventions and they would get a reduction in the fees associated with the development. This does something different. It takes kind of a menu of open space, architectural, ecological, a couple of higher design standards, and if a developer proposes them and follows them, they can get a density multiplier up to 0.9. So here's a little bit of the math. In a straight zoning, single-family residential subdivision, the greatest density that you could get, if you have one purely developable acre, since we require 10,000 square foot minimum lot size, you can get 4.3 units on that 1 acre. With a density multiplier of 0.9, you can get up to 8 units on an acre. So when we did the math, we looked at some of our, like, take for example, I won't mention by names. Attorney Blackerby doesn't like when I do that. So just, we'll just talk about a development that we've put through recently with smaller lot sizes. And that development has anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000 square foot lots. So we interpreted that as, okay, the development community wants and can create residential subdivisions that are on smaller lots, but bring all the things that, people want to see. High-end amenities, walking trails, open space, smaller lots that they don't have to spend a lot of maintenance time on. So through this residential density bonus, it is possible for a developer to come forward with a purely residential, single-family development and get up to 8 units an acre. And that's a 5,000 square foot lot size. But what we did is we kind of gave them even more flexibility and said, we're not going to worry about lot widths and side yard setbacks. You can propose all of that to us. You can get this significant density, but you got to do the open space, you got to do the recreation space, and you got to go above and beyond just the straight zoning. So I actually think that that is an incredible opportunity, and it's something that we've discussed extensively with the development community because many people were perplexed by not being able to do high-density residential development through a planned development district. So I just want to try to really put a fine point on that, because that was a big deal for the development community that was used to coming forward with PDDs for purely residential. Okay, so.
Ms. Stein, before you leave this page, in the required landscape plan and tree survey,
Yes.
can you speak a little bit to some of our land is fairly low, and with the amount of infill needed, it basically is a clear-cut situation for the developer.
Yep.
What kind of requirements are required for them to put back?
Yep. Yeah, so the City of St. Mary's has a vegetation ordinance that requires 50% of the land that is being developed. So if you're doing, just to keep it simple, if you're developing 20,000 square feet, you have to show that you will, at the end of the development, have 10,000 square feet of canopy. So just to help us with that. A live oak tree, even if you plant it at a 2-inch caliber, so brand new live oak, will give you the canopy credit for the mature life of that live oak, which is 1,500 square feet. So a lot of people think that our vegetation ordinance means that half of your land has to be covered by trees. No. The tree survey helps you as a developer understand what trees you have on site, and it helps us do the calculation to say, okay, wow, look at you got 10 live oaks on the site, and if you keep those there, then that means that you get 15,000 square feet of canopy. So in order for staff to understand the tree saving plan, which is what many developers will do, rather than, cutting the entire lot, they will find areas for tree saving, and then they will identify through a tree survey those trees, and then that helps staff calculate, okay, in your tree savings plan, you're going to have X amount of canopy square footage. Then we go to the landscape plan. And then in the landscape plan, you can put forward how you're going to make up that difference. To be honest with you, a lot of developments, they make it in the tree savings. And technically, they don't have to do a landscape plan. However, I think in many of our developments, our developers know that whether it be at the entry or in the common areas or each of the lots themselves, people tend to enjoy landscaping. So that's what we're doing, is we're requiring both kind of supplemental lot level and common area landscaping, as well as an understanding of the overall tree canopy.
Ms. Stein, I have a question about the tree saving
Yeah.
program. If certain trees are identified as existing on the land during the construction progress or process, what protective measures are taken to make sure that those trees actually survive
Yeah.
the construction?
Yep, so as part of the new proposed subdivision ordinance, there is a section, I think it's very early on, it's proposed section 86-6, Tree Survey and Protection Plan. Now, if you're looking at the redlined copy, some of this was already written, but I gotta be honest, we weren't doing it. So we weren't requiring a tree protection plan. That is something that this new proposed ordinance speaks more clearly about it. And I'll also say that one of the things that this new ordinance does is we now identify what we mean by protected trees. We didn't do that before. So the vegetation ordinance, which is separate from these two, is also getting rewritten. We're doing a lot of ordinance writing. And we wanted to kind of test out the language, particularly around protected trees and how we would protect them in the subdivision ordinance. So eventually, once the vegetation ordinance gets rewritten and approved, this document will become less wordy because we'll just be referring to the new vegetation ordinance. But the tree protection plan does give detailed criteria as to what type of protective area you should establish around the tree, how big that should be, when it should be in place. So that will be an enforcement matter. And
Another question about the trees.
Yes.
It may not matter, but have the tree board been invited to participate in?
Yes, yes,
program?
yes, they have. And I think part of what we're doing will be reinforced as the tree board moves to help us write the vegetation ordinance. Because a lot of these concepts will be duplicated in both this ordinance and the vegetation ordinance. Another really important thing I want to say here, by establishing protected trees, trees that are on site over a certain size and are of a certain species have to be identified. This ordinance moves very strongly to protecting those trees, right? So what you're getting at, Mr. Mayor, with bringing in fill and clearing, that means that the developer in advance needs to contemplate that. If the tree is coming down, not only will they still have to meet their vegetation requirements, but they will have to pay money into the tree bank, right? When I first got here and the flag is flying outside this door, I was told this is a highly vegetated city. We are a tree city, and we're trying to hold on to that with the 7,000 new units of housing that are coming. So that's why this ordinance comes out real strong about protecting trees.
Thank you.
Under recreation,
Yeah.
one of the concerns the developer brought to me was, I think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was for every 25 dwellings, they needed to have some sort of playground or recreation. Is that still a thing, or?
No. So what we do now is, I think maybe the confusion with recreation space was, we're only going to require it for developments over 25 units. So if
Okay.
you're doing a development that's like, 12 townhomes, we're not going to require you to do recreation space. But recreation space is predicated, here, let me just find it in the ordinance. before I
And what,
miss.
do they have a list of different things they
They
could use?
do.
Okay.
Yep.
So it doesn't
Both-
have to be like monkey bars?
Oh,
and-
no,
okay.
both passive and active recreation. No, we didn't, we didn't require golf courses. Although I thought about it, no, I didn't. Go ahead, council member, I'm
How does
looking
our
and listening.
tree policy, is our tree policy any different than Kingsland and Woodbine?
Very different. Kingsland doesn't have one.
Okay.
We're a tree city.
Yeah. So the, Councilmember Nashvento, page
other
24 of the subdivision ordinance has the recreation area requirements.
I'm turning
Okay?
there.
And it goes, and also page 23 gives you a little bit more detail. So the amount of recreation area required within residential subdivisions greater than 25 units. So if you're between 25 and 300 total units, we're going to do it per square foot of unit. So 200 square feet per unit. And then it gives you like a little bit of detail as to if you're under 50 units, you only have to do passive. If you're between 50 and 300 units, you have to do a mix of passive and active. So we tried to give a lot of flexibility there and a lot of opportunities. And on page 24, we have a little table that talks about passive versus active. And we communicate that as being, these are just suggestions. It's not an exhaustive list.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. All right. So why did, how am I doing on time? Oh, I think I've run over. I'm sorry. I want to just give you a little bit of background as to why we chose to move towards what I believe is a community scale commercial development tool. So this is a very interesting study that Georgia Power did for us in 2017 and for Camden County. And the Joint Development Authority tells me that they're requesting more recent data, so from like 2022, I think. What this is known as is a retail marketplace profile. What you see in the bar graph, so if you can't see it, listed are certain sectors, industry subsectors. So in the list, motor vehicle and parts dealers, furniture and home furnishing stores, electronics and appliance stores, building materials, food and beverage. What you're seeing on this chart, anything to the right of the midline is information that residents of Camden County are taking their purchasing power and they're purchasing these things outside of the county. So this is what folks refer to as leakage data. So although we have the purchasing power in the county, the places to go and purchase these goods are outside of the county. So a very savvy developer showed me this when I first started here, and that was the idea for this community scale commercial. So what do I mean by that? So now if you're doing a plan development district, any future plan development district needs to allocate 25% of developable land, not less, or it can be a mix, sorry, I don't know. No more than 75% of the developable land can be used for purely residential. That additional 25% needs to be a mix of manufacturing, commercial, retail, office, even light industrial. So what we're trying to do is to get to this idea of a walkable, golf cartable, bikeable neighborhood where you don't have to go too far to get your services. So really this data is what is anchoring this idea that, if we build it, they will come. Because what I hear from a lot of developers who don't do commercial development, they do more home building, they tell me that, well, if you make me build the commercial, it'll just sit there empty. And I really don't believe that. I believe that if we kind of integrate commercial within urban design patterns and within residential development, we'll see that we can fill those spaces with local businesses. Okay, so then here's just some of those takeaways about from the new plan development district. Again, the biggest one is that required mix of uses. So you got to bring in residential, no more than 75% of developable land, and the remaining 25% has to be a mix. And we've opened it way up. So there are, good communities that can create light industrial right next to residential. It can be like a live-work environment. So really giving a lot of flexibility and opportunity there. Any questions?
That's great, thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right. Is that all, Jane?
I'm sorry, I do have one more thing. The Public Works Department has asked me, and this is a supplemental page that you all have a printout of, the copies of the red line and the clean line version of the subdivision ordinance which you received does not have this sheet. So the Public Works Department has asked me to ask staff to add this detailed revisions specifically regarding irrigation. I think we've had some challenges with irrigation and irrigation meters, and this is meant to give clearer guidance. And I apologize, but this, Mr. Marr and I discussed this late last week, so this would be, and they do. They have a printout, yeah.
All right.
All right.
Everything? So thank you very much for all the hard work by yourself and your department and in helping to create a vision for a better city of St. Mary's full of tree canopy.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll recess this work session and we'll be back at 6 o'clock.